this whole breakdown of the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact is one of those great, vast historical changes in which an empire collapses. And it happened, for the most part, peacefully. And that's really a remarkable transition in human history. I'm not sure there are many examples of an empire like this falling apart as quickly and as peacefully as this one did. And that, I think, is a tribute to a lot of men and women who made that process happen and avoided tragedy.
Thursday, November 9th, 1989, Berlin, East Germany. Some citizens spontaneously start demolishing the Berlin Wall. For decades, this concrete boundary had been the dividing line in Europe between the democratic Western Bloc, aligned with the USA, and the totalitarian communist East Bloc, made up of the Soviet Union and its satellite states. The two blocs were in a state of tension known as the Cold War. Either side had the potential to not only eliminate the other, but to destroy the entire world. In 1989, this conflict would come to an end, as the subjects of the once Grand Soviet Union freed themselves, either through immediate violence or through peaceful compromise. The story I'm going to tell is about one of those countries, Bulgaria. Many nations went through cycles of violence, but Bulgaria solved this conflict by way of compromise, setting an example of peaceful transformation. The Velvet Revolution in Bulgaria was a non-violent transition from a communist rule and planned economy to a free market and democracy. The two political powers during that transition, the Communist Party and the Democratic Union, sat at a round table and made successive agreeable compromises to preserve the peace in the country and avoid civil war. How did they make it work? After the end of World War II, most of Eastern Europe, including Bulgaria, remained controlled by Soviet Russia. But in 1989, the Soviet political system started to collapse, and the entire Eastern Bloc fell into economic and political crises. The people of Bulgaria, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, East Germany, and Romania started mass protests against their totalitarian regimes and demanded democracy and freedom. In Bulgaria, change was sparked by an internal coup in the Communist Party itself.
Имало една група политически дейци, които са влезли в контакт с Горбачов. Това са Петър Младенов, това е Андрей Луканов, това е Добри Джуров. Тази среща е станала в Букурещ на заседание на Варшавския договор и там е станала оговорката. Разбира се, Горбачов се е дистанцирал и казал, това е ваша вътрешна работа, вам видне е казал той.
I mean, we supported the process of freedom and democracy for the people of Eastern Europe. But on the other hand, we had to be very careful that the Soviet Union was this enormous military structure with the capability to essentially destroy the world. And what I think had to happen was that various leaders in the U.S., Europe, Russia, and other places had to understand that if there was going to be a transition, this transition had to be managed in a way that avoided conflict.
The transition in Bulgaria started the very next day after the fall of the Berlin Wall. On November 10th, 1989, after 35 years in power, totalitarian leader Тодор Живков was stripped of his post and replaced by Foreign Minister Петър Младенов.
Нито един друг военачалник не е взел участие в него. Нито едно поделение от армията не е поставено в бойна готовност.
At the time, the constitution allowed for only one party to be in power, the Communist Party. A week after the fall of Zhivkov, the first anti-communist rally was organized in front of Alexander Nevsky Cathedral in Sofia. Masses of people poured into the streets as the newly born democratic opposition began gaining power. On December 7th, 1989, the main opposition power, the Union of Democratic Forces, was founded. The conflict between the communist regime and the people seeking freedom and democracy deepened. On December 14th, thousands of demonstrators surrounded the parliament in Sofia. The passionate, angry crowd called for the cancellation of Article 1 from the Communist Constitution. Bulgarian communist leader Petr Mladenov tried to calm the crowd down, but was pushed back by demonstrators. On the night of December 14th, the totalitarian regime in Bulgaria did not send the tanks against civilian people. Meanwhile, 2 days later, Romania experienced the horror of a massacre when dictator Nicolae Ceausescu sent the army against street protesters similar to those in front of the Bulgarian parliament. During the first critical months of the Velvet Revolution, Bulgaria was still able to avoid deadly violence through a series of compromises. In January of 1990, the democratic opposition and the communist government agreed upon creating a round table to negotiate a peaceful transition to democracy. The round table appointed elections for a great national assembly, which had to create a new democratic constitution of Bulgaria.
В края на кращата ние успяхме да наложим това нещо с кръглата маса, обаче кръглата маса подкрепена от улицата.
In the year 1990, the political life in Bulgaria witnessed a peak in mass protests, rallies, and street gatherings. The most impressive event was the rally of the democratic forces in Sofia on June 8th. More than 1 million people participated. Despite the enormous support from the street, 2 days later, the democratic opposition lost the elections. Many people were unhappy that the Communist Party remained in power, and soon after the elections, Bulgaria was once again on the brink of bloody clashes.
Тълпата дойде, почна да блъска по вратите, направо събори загражденията и напираше да влезе в парламента. Аз бях изправен пред проблема да извикам червените барети или да се въздържа.
To prevent the social conflict from further escalation, the politicians made another compromise. Despite the Democrats losing the elections, their leader, Cheruzhev, was elected by the Great National Assembly to be President of Bulgaria with the support of both sides, the opposition and the communist majority.
Спазариха се тогава. Това беше... Спазари се определенето на Желев за президент. И то именно с решаващата роля на господин Луканов.
In 1990, under Prime Minister Andrei Lukanov, the country sank into economic depression. Goods disappeared from the shops, many people lost their jobs, the economy collapsed. Despite all problems, in the summer of 1991, the Grand National Assembly adopted a new democratic constitution. The days of the communist political system in Bulgaria were over. The new constitution established a democracy and guaranteed separation of powers, freedom of speech, press, and religion in the country. In the fall of 1991, the Union of Democratic Forces won the parliamentary elections, and its leader Fyodor Dimitrov became the first democratic prime minister of the country.
Моето правителство завари държавата в състояние на банкрут и я остави в състояние на известна стабилност.
The possibility of a bloody conflict in Bulgaria itself was the same like in the neighboring states of Romania and Yugoslavia. But Bulgarians decided that no matter how serious the conflict, compromise is a better solution than any loss of life.
I think the difference between Bulgaria and some of these other regions that had so much trouble in the 90s is Bulgaria seems to have a sense of where it wants to go. And there's a common sense of direction. There are issues along the way, but all in all, the general direction of the country seems to be clear. That wasn't true in many other places.
The Velvet Revolution in Bulgaria was a peaceful transformation of the nation's political and economic system from a totalitarian communist regime to a democracy and free market. The peaceful model had a few shortcomings. The economy collapsed, many Bulgarians lost their savings and their jobs, and more than 1 million, predominantly young people, left the country. The biggest advantage of that model was that Bulgaria maintained its stability, became a democratic country, and was welcomed as a member of NATO and the European Union. There are still many nations in the world struggling under political, religious, and economic repressions which are seeking freedom and democracy. The Bulgarian Velvet Revolution provides them with a working model of how to find a peaceful solution to their conflicts through hefty negotiations and compromises.